It's finally here, or a third of it. See, I'm splitting this video into 3 parts. Personally, I think it'd be better to make multiple short uploads instead of one long one. If I did make one long one, then it would take much longer. I think we would all prefer it if I could get my upload schedule in order. Before I start though, I'd like to add a disclaimer. I will not get all of these exactly right. I just can't. I may miss some uses for certain items, although I'll try my best to look at each of them with as much detail as I can. If you spot a mistake or inconsistency, definitely write it down in the comments so we can all learn from it. I am but one man. I can and might get some of these things wrong. Alright, here we go. Our first item is Belly Button. Belly Button allows you to play more loot cards, mostly on your turn. Not only does it allow you to play one additional loot card on your turn, each time you take damage, your character card recharges. This means, in theory, you can play a total of 4 loot cards on your turn without dying. In addition to this, it allows you to recharge your character tap if you take damage in the off turn. Keep in mind, if you happen to be playing a character with an alternate character tap like Blind Johnny or Baba, the on-hit effect will differ. Playing an additional loot card each turn can help you gain more sense on your turn or just be more responsive. It's a totally average card, and it gets B tier. Bob's Brain is an item notorious for being very hit or miss in the video game, and in the card game it's no different. Each time an attack is declared, it will either deal a damage to a monster, a player, or you. When you're attacking a monster, most of the time you'd really appreciate anything that deals extra damage to it. With Bob's Brain, you have a 1/3 chance to do that, while 2/3 will mildly inconvenience other players or cripple your attack, both of which you usually don't want. Sometimes it might be of use to deal damage to another player, like if they have an Abaddon or playing as a low health character. Maybe you want to activate someone else's damage activated item for some reason, or maybe another player is at 1 health from some previous interaction, who knows? Most of the time though, just like in the game, this is a very hit or miss card, and it's likely to miss that hit. C tier. Breakfast gives you 1 extra health. Let's talk about stat boost items for a second. Stat boost items are always very powerful. In layman's terms, damage lowers the amount of hits you need to kill a monster, dice roll increases the chance you'll hit a monster, and health can increase the amount of times you can afford to miss. Health won't always save you, as some monsters can do enough damage to circumvent it, but health has another more supportive use than being a safety net. With extra health, you are much less likely to be a victim of off-turn damage. Most sources of off-turn damage do 1 to 2 damage. With 2 health, if you take damage from an interaction like Wrath dying, you could be bombed and die. But with an extra health, someone would need to use 2 bombs to kill you, or waste a gold bomb or mega bomb. Obviously there are other ways to die off turn, but having an extra point of health decreases that likelihood tremendously. This item, like most stat up items, gets S tier. Brimstone. Now we get to talk about extra damage. Like I said, having even 1 extra point of damage cuts the amount of successful attacks needed to kill a monster in half. If you only need half the rolls to kill a monster, you have much better odds of defeating it. Damage can also occasionally help you in player combat. If an average 2-1 player attacks you and misses, you'll kill him instantly, barring any loot plays. Likewise, if you attack an average player, you can kill him in 1 hit. Having an extra point of damage is always great. In addition to this point of damage, Brimstone makes you deal 1 damage to another player each time you land a successful attack. This means, in theory, if you attack a monster with greater than 2 health, you can kill a player every time you attack. Most people don't do this in the early to mid game because everyone's still pretending to be friends, but once late game hits, you can really wreak some havoc with this thing. Brimstone gets an S tier. Bumbo is a card that most of the time, to me, feels like a curse. Let's get the big issue out of the way first. You can't gain sense while you have this. For each cent you would gain, Bumbo gets a counter. If you are low on useful items, this is really not good. You cannot gain any cash to buy items or barter with players, which is really bad. Good items can make all the difference in this game, and without them you can really fall short. If you have a good stack of items already, Bumbo can be quite a help. Remember the counters we talked about? Bumbo levels up with certain amounts of counters, allowing him to have different effects. With 1 counter, just 1, your first attack roll each turn goes up by 2, meaning you are at least 33% more likely to hit your roll, which in this game means you'll usually hit it. This can help you get a good first hit on higher roll monsters, and partners well with other first roll items, as a +2 dice roll is just nuts, even if it is for just 1 roll. With 10 counters, you get a full-on 1 damage up. I have already talked about how great damage ups are, so we'll just say this is fantastic and move forward. Lastly, if you can manage to collect 25 counters with this item, you can make as many attacks as you want on your turn. This allows you to, in many situations, tear through monsters with your increased stats and stop when it gets too risky. If you can manage to get to this point, this can be one of the best items in the game, but due to the fact that getting here is so difficult and this item has such a crippling downside, it gets B tier. Post-production Raider White Shear. Stealing and bartering technically does not count as gaining sense. You can gain sense that way. Whoopsie doodle. Still B tier though. Cambion Conception is one of those items that works best if you already have a decent amount of items. To be fair, due to how the game itself works, most items work better with more items to interact with. Anyway, when you take damage, the amount of damage you took is added to the item and counters. Once it has 6 or more counters, 6 are removed and you gain a treasure. That means if you hang on to this long term, you can net yourself an item or two. The thing is, holding on to this long term implies you have worse items to sacrifice when you die. Due to how long you have to hold on to this to get use out of it, this card may not survive long enough to gain its effect, and adding to that, you probably won't want this in the late game. One more quick thing to note, this item is vastly improved if you have a way to deal damage to yourself in a safe environment, or have some kind of health up. Anyway, B tier. Champion Belt grants you an extra point of damage for your first roll, which we've discussed already. However, it also grants you an additional attack on your turn. Having an additional attack grants you the possibility of killing 2 monsters on a turn if things line up well for you. Killing more monsters means more rewards, which can help you progress faster. It can also make it more likely you'll see a soul-having monster, as if you kill a monster and leave an empty slot, a monster with a soul could fill it, allowing you to attack it. Overall, just a solid card. B tier. Charged Baby is a good item, but only if you have a worthwhile active item to combo it with. If you don't, this item is nearly useless, unless you feel like giving your friendo free charges. Of course, you could charge him for the charges, taking charge of the less fortunate situation the game has charged you with. Charge. Charged Baby allows an item to be recharged every time a 2 is rolled. That means with every roll, you have a chance to recharge an item, which is quite useful. However, like I just said, this item requires you to have an active item worth recharging to be of use, so it kind of brings it down to B tier. Guilty as charged. Cheese Grater. Cheese Grater is known as a legendarily bad card, like almost iconically bad, like this game's version of the Wiz bad, even though there is an item named the Wiz that is much worse. I may not be the first to say it, but Cheese Grater isn't a horrible item. Whenever somebody rolls a 6, you reveal the top card of any deck to all players, and you may then discard it or leave it as it is. This gives all players information on future cards. You can use this to make the game smoother, or possibly throw away cards nobody wants to deal with. The issue is, this item barely benefits you more than other players. Remember, you have to use this when a 6 is rolled. There is no may or something that presents it as a choice. Cheese Grater is far from the worst item in this game, but it is below average. This gets a C tier. Curse of the Tower is an item nobody wants to see. With it, each time you take damage, you have a 50-50 chance of either dealing 1 damage to all monsters or dealing 1 damage to all players, meaning this is kind of an aggressive item. This item might lend itself better to the late game, as it does not directly harm its user, but definitely pisses off other players. Dealing damage to monsters is helpful, let's be honest, but that's not what this item is for. You can use it to make people prevent damage for you, or just use it to kill everyone. It's all around just a dickish item to buy, but as dickish as it is, it's an alright late game item. B tier. Side note, this item is horrid in the early game due to the inevitability of everyone hating you and nobody wanting to trade with you or help you out ever. Please stop buying this turn 1. Don't be a dickhead. Dad's Lost Coin is the poster child of good on-roll effect items. It states that when anyone rolls a 1, you can force a player to re-roll it. Rerolling any number is great, but due to 1's status as an overall epic fail is particularly useful. There are almost no monsters that take damage on a roll of 1, meaning that if you happen to roll a 1, which is nearly always inherently bad, it can be re-rolled. This item can also be used to affect other people, perhaps asking for some spare change each time you use it on them. Being able to both completely negate epic fails and alter other players' rolls, even if mostly for the better, nets this an S tier. Always go for this. Dark Bum, a card that most people stare at and think, well, that's not worth it, and they're usually right. At the start of your turn, you roll, and if you get a 1 or 2, you get 3 cents, which is okay. A 3 or 4, you get 1 loot, which is a lot better, but a 5 or 6 makes you take damage. Taking a damage at the start of your turn puts you in an immediate disadvantage. You're more susceptible to bombs, attacking things becomes much more risky, and you're overall just vulnerable. Risking this in return for a small amount of resource gain at the start of each turn is just super not worth it. The issue with this item, I feel, is that even though the positive outcome is more likely to occur, the risk outweighs the reward. 3 cents or 1 loot is not enough to offset a crippled turn, in my opinion. I'm sorry. Let's get to C tier. Dead Bird allows you to look at a player's hand and steal one of their cards when they roll a 3. Being able to look at a player's hand every time this happens is powerful enough, but being able to steal any loot card you want from them is just nuts. Using this can give you intel on what other players have, and can help you prevent them from making big plays. Dead Bird gets an S tier. It's just such a good support item. We've already talked about health ups. This has the same effect as the last one. S tier, yeah. Dry Baby is a card that can be of great use when the situation arises to use it. Dry Baby reduces all incoming damage to 1, which is useless when taking a single point of damage, which is most of what you'll be taking. However, if you happen to be attacking a monster with higher damage, this item really comes into handy, as the damage resistance will afford you more chances to hit the monster. It's not the most common situation to be in, but this item will help you out much more often than you might think. Add in that players who might try to kill you with high damage attacks like Mega Bombs or Weakened, you've got a pretty decent defensive item. B tier. Eden's Blessing seems like an underwhelming item, and given it kind of is. Gaining 6 cents at the end of your turn, if you have none, basically means that if you have less than 6 cents at the end of your turn, you'll be giving it to another player to cash in on that free cent gain. Having 6 cents at the end of your turn really isn't that great unless you have a paid item. I should mention, this item would, in theory, work super well with Bumbo, given that you can cash in all your cents before your turn ends to get enough to deal 1 damage in the off turn. If all you have to spend cash on, though, is items, you're basically making sure other players gain free cents for doing nothing, and committing to using a cent card on your turn so you can buy an item. Just not a super powerful item. C tier. Empty Vessel can be pretty useful, but can also be pretty limiting. With this item, having 0 loot cards in your hand gains you an extra point of damage, but this isn't really the stat we're looking at. Having no loot cards is almost never something you want to go for, so this stat kind of falls flat and remains situational. However, if you have 0 cents, you gain +1 to all attack rolls. This is the better stat, and better thing to have 0 of, due to the fact that you can just give away money at any time. As I have said, widening the window of opportunity is almost always the best move in Force Souls. The issue with this is, of course, that you have to throw away all your money to gain this opportunity. To be fair, this is not the biggest downside in the world, and you could even make a deal with players asking them to hold on to your money and then give some back when the attack is done. With this in mind, I would say this item belongs in B tier. It has a very powerful upside with a price to pay, and a second stat that can be helpful, albeit rare to see in action. Eye of Greed is a card that nets you 3 cents when someone rolls a 5. It's one of the best items for gaining cents, depending on your luck, and can help you afford more items or barter more. I have nothing else to say about it, just a solid item. B tier. Fanny Pack allows you to loot 1 every time you take damage. I shouldn't have to tell you that you'll take a good amount of damage over the course of a Force Souls game, because if you've played one, you probably already know that. Fanny Pack will consistently increase the amount of loot cards you draw, and in addition to this, if you have a great loot card worth saving, you can use this card to protect it from the death penalty. If you get hit with damage that would kill you, Fanny Pack gives you a loot card, which you can then sacrifice to the death penalty. There are better ways to get loot, but any method of getting loot is usually a good one. B tier. Finger isn't a super powerful item unless you have a decent amount of items on hand. When another player rolls a 2, you can swap any of your non-eternal items for one of theirs. If you can grab a sweet item from them in exchange for something lesser, like a sack of pennies, that's great. But usually what I see happen is the fun for the whole family game of Pass the Finger, which just results in item stealing chaos that is honestly pretty funny to watch. Fun fact, you can use this item to throw away your haunt items and give them to other players. Pro tip. B tier. Goathead is a superb item that specializes in making sure your hand is as optimized and powerful as possible. With this item, you are allowed to discard as many cards from your hand as you want at the end of your turn, and then draw equal amounts of cards back. This basically allows you to trash useless loot cards for the chance of getting more favorable ones from the deck. Obviously, this is really strong, especially if you have a good amount of loot cards. There really isn't a downside to this item. This thing is just really powerful. Anyone who's had this card before undoubtedly knows that. S tier. Greed's Gullet is a situational item. When you die holding it, you'll gain 8 cents. This means you'll probably be able to buy an item when it's your turn again, but aside from the obvious applications, I find this to be a counterintuitive item. An item that rewards you for dying by giving you almost enough money to buy another item? Keep in mind, the death penalty is an item, a cent, and a loot card. To me, that does not sound quite worth it, even for 8 cents. Don't get me wrong, 8 cents is a big jump, and in theory, it could help you win a Soul of Greed. But I can't help but think that an item that softens the death penalty pales in comparison to an item that might, I don't know, prevent you from dying in the first place, like Mr. Boom. This might be a little controversial, but this is going in C tier. Guppy's Collar is just a working version of the Ankh. If you die, you roll, and if you hit a 1 through 3, your turn ends and you live. Otherwise, death proceeds as normal. A 50% chance to not pay the death penalty is nothing to scoff at, as the more you die, the more advantages you lose. In addition to this item counts towards getting the Soul of Guppy, which may or may not be in your game. Even if it isn't, this item still gets A tier. The 50% chance is massive, especially if you have a dice modifier of any kind. Keeping your stuff on death is a super underrated ability to have in 4 Souls. A tier. Ipecac is a mix of a damage up, which we've already talked about, and an aggressive item. If you roll a 6 on an attack, you deal 1 damage to all other players. If you manage to roll 2 6s on the same turn, that means you'll kill every other player in most situations. Even if it doesn't, you can force players to respond to the off-turn damage with soul hearts, draining them of resources to use in the future. Most people just use Ipecac as a damage up, but if you feel particularly nasty, remember, you can always re-roll that 5. Maybe you'll get a 6. S tier. Meat simply gives you +1 to attack rolls. Greater attack rolls is probably the greatest stat up of the 3 you can get. This is because 4 Souls is a very chance-based game. In chance-based games, the most consistent path to winning is lessening the effect chance has on the game, i.e. improving the likelihood you will hit something. Widening the window of opportunity is almost always better than throwing a bigger rock through it, although throwing a bigger rock can help sometimes. Basically, a 4+ roll monster is a lot easier than a 5+ roll monster most of the time. Meat gets an S tier. Mom's Box is an item that allows you to cycle your hand every so often. When a 4 is rolled, you are allowed to loot 1, then discard a loot card. This allows you the chance of a good loot card at the cost of one of your existing loot cards. Something to note, this card is risk-free due to the fact that you loot 1 before you discard, so if you don't like the card that you drew, you may just throw that same card away with no issues. I know I've put a lot of cards in B tier, but for some reason these early cards are oddly really balanced. So B tier. We'll get to the crazy cards soon enough, I swear. Mom's Coin Purse allows you to loot 1 more card than normal at the start of your turn. This means Mom's Coin Purse is in A tier. Looting 2 instead of 1 with Mom's Coin Purse at the start of your turn is very powerful, as it gives you double the chances of getting a good loot card. 99% of the time, the more loot cards are in your hand, the better you'll be doing. Always go for Mom's Coin Purse if you see it. It'll help you so much. A tier. Mom's Purse allows you to loot 1 more card than normal at the start of your turn. This means Mom's Purse is in A tier. Looting 2 instead of 1 with Mom's Purse at the start of your turn is very powerful, as it gives you double the chances of getting a good loot card. 99% of the time, the more loot cards are in your hand, the better you'll be doing. Always go for Mom's Purse if you see it. It'll help you so much. A tier. Mom's Razor allows you to deal 1 damage to a player if they roll a 6. This can allow you to play aggressively in the late game, but this sees little use in the early game. You know what? I'm just going to explain the stages of the game real quick, just because I can. Early game is around the first few rotations. Alliances are formed easily here, and most people are focused on getting good loot, good treasures, and things to help them gain souls. Some players may gain a soul, but most of the time people are more focused on saving cash for treasures. Most people are nice to each other because nobody has any reason to hate one another yet. The most useful items at this point in the game are resource gaining items, like these. The middle game takes up most of the game. People have a few souls at this point, maybe a bonus soul or 2. People have items and people are doing well. At this point, some rivalries have probably taken form. Maybe someone had to choose to kill someone, or there was a little betrayal down the line, you know. People might be a little less friendly towards one another and a little more neutral. Items that help with attacking are useful here, but to be fair, they're kind of useful at any point in the game. Late game begins basically as soon as someone is one soul away from winning. At this point, if you aren't on top, you are trying to drag people down. Some items, like Curse of the Tower, help you stay on top, while others, Mom's Razor, help you drag people down. Most, if not all, alliances have fallen at this point. Most people have no problem killing one another, or generally just being much more aggressive. What the fuck was I talking about? Oh, yeah. Mom's Razor. It's good, B tier. Most of the game it's just okay, but late game it blossoms into an okay item. The issue is it relies on a single dice roll to be effective, and obviously that's not something that's guaranteed to happen. Monstrous Tooth is always a scary item to have in play for people that aren't controlling it. At the start of its owner's turn, a person is selected at random. That player discards an item they control. Controlling this item makes you an immediate target, but if nothing can be done, it will slowly deplete other players of valuable tools to stop you, or even win the game. The longer you hold on to this, the more effective it will be, despite the clear target it puts on your back. Forcing someone at the table to discard a treasure every time your turn comes is nothing to brush off. This item, however dickish it is, gets an A tier. Polydactyl allows you to gain a damage up for your first attack roll each turn, and allows you to play an additional loot card on your turn. The additional loot play is helpful, as it allows you to play 2 loot cards on your turn while still maintaining the ability to play a loot card in the off turn. The extra damage on your first roll can give you a great head start if you manage to hit it, that is. We've covered most of these stats before, so they roll into just a B tier item. Again, I'm sorry about all these B tiers, man. So balanced, that's so weird, isn't it? Restart is an item that more speeds up the game than directly benefits you. It allows the user to put any amount of shop items into discard at the start of your turn. You can use this to dump valuable items you don't want other players getting, or items you just rather not see. Overall, I really don't think this item is that useful. I've never seen this in a shop slot and think, damn, I need to allocate my resources and grab that for myself. I've never thought this. This earns it our first D tier. Sorry, Restock fans. Well, this card is great. Not much to say here. All this card does is give you the opportunity to change every epic fail roll into a guaranteed hit in terms of attacking. Sacred Heart has other uses, like being used in effect rolls, but really that's besides the point. S tier, not much to say here. Shadow is an incredibly good item to have if someone else has a really good item. When someone dies while you hold this, you not only gain the sense and loot they would toss, you also get to choose what item they discard. This gives you a huge amount of control on how the game flows. Being able to force players to discard their strongest treasure is very powerful, not to mention the free loot and sense you get. To be fair, the loot is usually not going to be the greatest, given that it will almost always be the worst loot card in their hand that you get. But still, this card is very well deserving of A tier for how well it can control the game. Shiny Rock is only good if you have a decent amount of active items, say 3. Gaining a cent every time you activate one of these items makes it a somewhat viable form of long-term resource gain. But I would be lying if I didn't think this item would work way better as a trinket. I mean, would you pay 10 cents for this? Like maybe if I had 4 active items, which, let's be honest, I probably don't have. It can be handy in the specific situation that it adheres to, but otherwise this item has too specific a use case to be all that helpful. C tier. Spider Mod. This item states that anytime a 5 is rolled, you may put a monster not being attacked into discard and replace it with the top card of the monster deck. This allows you to get rid of cursed monsters or monsters with effects that bog down the game even when it isn't being attacked, or monsters you're just tired of looking at. Now, is it just me, or should this item have a cooler effect? I feel like Spider Mod is a fan favorite in the video game, but why is it so boring here? I mean, I don't know. I just feel like this card isn't all that useful or that impactful to me. I'm sorry. C tier. Oh boy, rant time. I do not think I have ever seen anyone take advantage of starter deck, not once. You loot 2 if you have 8 cards in your hand at the end of your turn. This is just not something that happens in a normal game. What really hammers this thing into the D tier is that end of turn thing. Not only do I need 8 loot cards, but I need them at the end of my turn. The turn where I have probably already played at least 1 loot card, so I need to start with like maybe 8 or 9. This item is so specific and so useless that I am so boggled, blastered that the cheese grater is known as the memey horrible bad item card, and not this piece of nonsense. Not only does this come into play almost never, but unless the Soul of Gluttony is in play, why do you need 2 more loot cards? You have 8 already. I usually don't say this. You know, more loot cards is great. But this thing is stupid! I usually don't say this. I mean, more loot cards is better, but like, I mean, I guess you could get something better than what you have. It's, you know, it's always good to have more loot cards, but it's not like you're desperately in need of loot cards when you have 8 of them at the end of your turn. Don't fucking buy this. You don't need it. You really don't. You're not gonna pull Lost Soul with this. Don't. Fuck it. D tier. Steamy Sale is S tier. I mean, look at it. Shop items for half price. The only downside to this, if you can even call it that, is that you can't take advantage of this with buying from the top, as sometimes the items in the shop are just not good. Items being half off means you can spend less time collecting synths and more time playing other loot cards or going for other things. Steamy Sale isn't just a discount. It allows you to spend more loot plays using bombs or soul hearts instead of gaining synths. Now it's even better than you thought it was. You're welcome. Suicide King is a very situational card. Unless you're playing as it allows you to loot 3 before you pay penalties for dying, which basically allows you to prevent any of the loot you had before death from being lost. The problem with this card, of course, is that dying is bad, and you typically won't be able to take advantage of this card more than once. When you die, you'll likely want to hold on to treasures that outright prevent you from dying, rather than making it more palatable. This item gets a C tier. It doesn't give enough to really be worth keeping around, and unless you have a shittier item, you probably won't hold on to this item when you die. We've already talked about, Synthanol. S tier. Terracloth is a card we've basically already covered. It's Dead Bird, but worse. Instead of looking at a player's hand to steal a card, this item forces the player in question to give you a loot card of their choice. Not only do you not get to see that player's hand, but you can't choose what loot you get, not even randomly. It's just kinda sad. B tier. The blue map allows you to look at and rearrange the top 4 cards in the treasure deck at the end of your turn. This can give you intel on what cards are up next and can allow you to control what the next item a player gets. The only issue is that you'll likely have to wait a rotation for you to take advantage of however you arrange the cards, which is a problem all the map items share. This item would be a lot better if you use it at the start of your turn. C tier. Okay, nobody talks about this, but the chest is just a free soul waiting to happen. For the low price of suicide or specific interactions, you get a free soul. Be careful while this is still an item. Other players might try to steal it with items like Contract from Below. Still, this thing is basically a lost soul but for the treasure tech. SS tier. The compass will almost never affect you while you hold it. Being able to rearrange cards in a deck at the end of your turn nets you some control, maybe allowing you to make a deal with someone to get them a good card. The fact that it only goes 4 cards deep means that unless nobody got any loot aside from their loot step, you won't be able to get any of the loot you rearrange without help from an item. This thing is just not good. D tier. The D10 is kind of the unsaid nothing item, like cheese grater. Like nobody says it, but we're all thinking it, right? Like, wow, what useful strategies this opens up. So glad I managed to find this card. It allows you to place the top card of a monster deck in a slot not being attacked when a 3 is rolled. You can use it to see what cards might be hiding in the top deck, and to cover annoying cursed monsters you don't want to fight, but other than that, this doesn't really have too many applications. C tier. The Dead Cat is one of the best defensive items in the game, until it stops working. Gaining this item basically gets you a temporary +9 health, which basically guarantees you at least 1 free monster kill. Not to mention this is a Guppy item, which allows it to be chosen as part of Devil Deal and counts toward Soul of Guppy. The only problem with this item is that once it runs out of counters, it's useless unless you have a particular item that might be able to replenish them somehow. This item gets an S anyway, because I mean +9 health. Even if it's temporary, it's crazy. The Habit allows you to recharge an item the first time you take damage each turn. This can be useful both on and off turn, as it allows you to use an item you might have already used another time if you get hit, or when something does damage to you in the off turn, and trust me, a lot of things can do damage to you in the off turn, you can use it in response. The only issue with this item, other than that some players might be able to read and may avoid making you take a useless 1 damage, is that you may not always have an item worth recharging. Because of that inconsistency, this gets a B tier. This item is just blue map for the monster deck. You can use it to put monsters in an order that might benefit or be a detriment to other players, search for events and curses and warn others, or keep a nasty card out of play. It's probably the best of the search for at the end of turn cards, but not by a particularly wide margin. It suffers from the same downfalls as most of the others, and is just in all a little bit of an under the radar type of card. C tier. The Midas Touch is actually really good. Gaining 3 cents for every monster that dies is no little number. On a typical turn, most players will try to attack a monster. If they manage to kill it, you gain 3 cents. If they fail, barring any escape type cards, they die and lose resources. This is a win-win for you and leads to you gaining a pretty consistent chunk of change. Don't sleep on this card. A tier. The Polaroid sucks. This is another card I'm sure we all look at and think, well, what the fuck am I gonna do with this? It allows you to draw 2 loot cards at the end of your turn if you have none. This only benefits players who are the lowest of the low and not by choice. Unlike with Sense, you can't easily make yourself have 0 loot cards. You have to play all of them or die a whole lot, and a card that benefits that is not a card I encourage you to get. D tier. The Relic is just great, not much to say. Gaining a loot card anytime someone rolls 1 is just good. You'd better hang on to this in the early game. Holding this will net you a free loot pretty consistently, especially if players have some roll for X type items. A tier. There's Options is just an okay item. It gives its controller knowledge of what's on top of the treasure deck and the ability to buy a second shop item on their turn, which, to be honest, does not come up too often, but it's a nice surprise to be sure when it does. This item is kind of not great if you don't have the money to do anything, and it does not directly benefit you if you don't have any way to get a decent amount of sense. It has its moments, but it's just too situational to be above C tier. Trinity Shield! A lot of people really do not like this item. And I can see why. It makes other players unable to interfere with you on your turn. No loot cards or active item uses. However, I do have to point out this item is almost exclusively for the late game. Not being able to ask for help from other players can be a massive hindrance, so if you buy this, you should make absolutely sure you do not need to ask for help until this item is destroyed. Do not get this item if you aren't in the lead or about to be in the lead. A tier. Blank Card is, simply put, very powerful. It allows you to, when tapped, play a copy of the last loot card you played. The reason this is so powerful is because a great deal of loot cards in Four Souls have no copies. You won't find a copy of cards like Stars or Death. Using this allows you to gain twice the benefits from any loot you play, definitely deserving of S tier. Book of Sin is a weird mix between a combat support card and a resource gain card. When tapped, you roll for an effect. Rolling 1 or 2 gets you a penny, which sucks. 3-4 gets loot, which is okay. And a 5 or 6 gets you an extra health for the current turn, which is pretty good. Other than the rare chance this card has to be used to block damage in the off turn, it isn't too noteworthy. You'll usually use it at the start of each turn, hoping to get that health up and benefiting even if you don't. B tier. Boomerang allows you to choose a player and steal a random loot card from their hand. Being random, this card is as effective as you think it is, randomly. You might steal yourself a great card, or you might take a dud off your opponent's hand. Despite the randomness, gaining a loot card every time you use this and depriving someone else of a loot card as well is pretty good. When your resources go up and other players go down, you are putting greater distance between you and that player in terms of options than just gaining 1 loot from the loot deck. This gets an A tier. Box is a card useful only in extremely specific power plays in the late game. Using it will destroy it and allow you to play as many loot cards as you want this turn. This can be used to cash in on all your sent loot cards, rack up some crazy interaction combo that somehow results in you going from no souls to 5, but the one thing it cannot be used for is anything if you do not have a large amount of loot cards. If you're desperate, you can use this to gain an off-turn loot play, but aside from that, this card isn't the best. When it gets its time to shine, it can really shine, but its use case is so specific you just may not see it during your game. C tier. Bum Friend allows you to loot 1 when used, and after that, you place 1 loot card from your hand on top of the deck. This kind of allows you to cycle your hand, but not very effectively, as putting the card from your hand on top of the deck means if you use Bum Friend again, you'll just get the card you threw away. It's helpful that you draw the loot before discarding the loot from your hand, though. It means if you draw a dud, you can just put it right back. This card is alright, but the inability to use it more often just kind of knocks it down a peg. C tier. There are 2 types of people who use Chaos. People who use it to constantly shake up the game, using it whenever possible, and people who bought it from the shop while staring down the player with an 8-card hand to their right. Most will fall into the latter, but it's fun to see someone just be goofy with it. It may surprise you to hear, but having indirect control over who owns what hand is pretty goddamn powerful, and swapping hands to look for valuable cards is a great strategy. This gets an A tier. Well, we all know where this is going. Most of the time, Chaos Card is used to instantly kill a boss or mega boss for that free soul or souls. The second most popular use for it is to destroy a soul, usually that of a winning player. But as for killing players and destroying items, I have almost never seen it happen. It's certainly always good to have that option. Being able to instantly kill something, someone, destroying item, or set a player back a soul is just plain fantastic. Always go for this card if you see it. If not for you, so that your friends can't use it against you. SS tier. Compost is a card that requires a little thoughts and a little planning to use effectively, i.e. looking at the top card of the discard to see if you want it. In all seriousness though, the real use of this card is to be able to rescue cards you've already played. Say you're attacking a monster with loot and its rewards. You deal 1 damage and finish it off with a bomb to stay safe. You can then use Compost to get that bomb back. It's a specific use, but one that can really come in handy on occasion. A tier. Crystal Ball basically allows you the 1 in 6 chance of looting 3 when this is used. If you have any form of dice manipulation, this can be a good item to have. Being able to choose the dice roll it activates causes a little inconsistency at times, but being able to choose what roll to aim for is certainly not a downside. The issue is, if you can't hit that 1 in 6 number, this item is useless. I've had games where I've gotten 6 loot in a turn with this, and one where I missed every single roll. That's just how it happens. A good 4 souls item is both powerful and consistent. The issue with this item, it is just not consistent at all. C tier. Decoy is an item that when used, swaps with another non-eternal item another player controls. This isn't always the most strategic item to use, but I wouldn't call it bad. It's likely this item will just cause a board-wide game of steal the good item before whoever's holding it eventually dies and sacrifices it. Stealing an item is good, but giving whoever you stole it from the resources to steal it right back does not make a great item. C tier. Diplopia can either be a massive help or completely useless, depending on what cards are in play. It allows you to copy the effects of a passive item until the end of turn. There are lots of great passive items like damage ups and health ups, but these cards aren't guaranteed to be in your game. You could very well not have a useful passive to copy, or any passive to copy at all. This possibility drags the card down slightly. But here's something to think about. When you hold this card, it will always have the best effect of every passive item on the table, since you can change it to fit your situation whenever you want. Or when you have a charge for it, that is. A tier. Flush allows you to banish every card in either the monster slots or shop slots to the bottom of their respective decks when used. You can use this to make the game flow smoother by tossing annoying monsters or bad treasures, or keep other players from attacking monsters you'd rather them not. This is another card that doesn't so much benefit you as it benefits the whole table most of the time, so it's really nothing special. C tier. Glass Cannon, what a power play. This card destroys another item in play when used. Then you roll. Upon rolling a 1 through 5, this is destroyed and you loot 2. This is already a great card. Destroying someone else's item and looting 2 is nothing to shake off. But if you roll a 6, this card is recharged, ready to use a second time. If you have some form of dice manipulation, this card becomes much better. The more you can use this, the more valuable treasures you can rip from your opponents. Since it's a single use, most of the time, it's going in A tier, but I'll be damned if I don't go for this thing when I see it. Unlike in the video game, Godhead actually is better than Sacred Heart and 4 Souls. Using it allows you to change any dice roll into a 1 or a 6. This removes all chance from an attack roll in comparison to re-rolling it, no matter what you're going for. Want the attacker to die? Change it to a 1. Want him to get a free hit? Change it to a 6. Godhead is a fantastic item because using it is not luck-based. It is certain that it will be as effective as possible every time, unless it gets butterbeat. S tier. Guppy's Head allows you to choose a player and they must give you one of their loot cards. This honestly makes it kind of a worse Boomerang. While Boomerang allows you to take a random card from a player of choice, Guppy's Head allows the player the option of what loot card to fork over, i.e. their worst one. This doesn't mean Guppy's Head is a bad item, however. It's still half of a soul of Guppy if it is in play, and again, gaining loot cards of any kind is always helpful. B tier. Guppy's Paw is encouraged to be used to defend other players. This item costs you 1 health to use when tapped, and prevents the next instance of up to 2 damage to a player. While you can use this to basically turn a 2 damage hit into a 1 damage hit, you can also use this to barter with other players, who will use its benefit much better than you ever will. Overall, an average item. B tier. Host Hat isn't bad, but people usually see it as a bit of a weird item. When used, you block 1 damage to you, and if you block that damage, you deal 1 damage to a player. Dealing 1 damage to a player is alright, and lends itself to the late game decently, but due to the fact that you can only use it on yourself, there isn't much left to talk about here. Maybe you could use it to deal damage to a player after blocking a hit, and then finish them off with a bomb. B tier, I guess. Jawbone. Some people really hate this card, apparently. I do have to admit, it is quite a powerful item. I've said this already, but gaining 3 cents is not what makes this a good card. It's the fact that it also takes 3 cents from a player. Being able to use this every rotation on any player you like means if you want to, you can consistently drain resources from a single player and leave them penniless. A tier. People might target you if you have this though. It is kind of a dickish item. Lucky Foot will allow you to add up to 2 to any non-attack roll when tapped. This gives it more of a supportive role, excelling in being used for roll for effect items, pills, or event cards. Lucky Foot isn't used super often, but when you do encounter a situation to use it, it's a really nice change of pace. Since it's another item that largely benefits from having items or cards that synergize with it, it gets B tier. Mini Mush is almost exclusively used aggressively. Sure, you could use it to alter non-attack rolls, but you know what's more consistent than waiting for an opportunity to lower a non-attack roll? Lowering someone else's attack roll and getting them killed. This is another solid late game card that can really ruin a leading player's role. A tier. Modeling Clay has the potential to be a fantastic item if it has a good item to copy. This item is weird to rank as it's totally dependent on the situation it's in to be useful. Maybe you'll copy a friend's godhead, maybe someone's birthright, or maybe you'll be forced to settle with copying someone's placebo or something. Keep in mind you can use it to copy one of your items, getting 2 of a single powerful item. A tier. Mom's Bra is really not the best. When used, it will reduce the next instance of damage a player takes this turn to 1. This means that it is only useful when fighting high damage monsters. Most monsters tend to have 1 damage, which makes this not of use in many situations. When it is up against a monster with higher than 1 damage, it's still a worse version of Dry Baby. The big issue with this item is the lack of an effect on 1 damage monsters. It can make you tankier against high damage monsters, maybe allowing you to tank an extra hit, but beyond that, this is really not that great. C tier. Mom's Shovel is an evil little item. It starts uncharged, but once you can use it, it allows you to steal a soul from another player. This is obviously very powerful. Not only does it put you up a soul, it puts someone else down a soul. Again, furthering the distance between you two. In addition to this, you can use this to steal a Megaboss's souls, gaining 2, since technically Megaboss souls count as 1 soul, it just has a value of 2. With this considered, Mom's Shovel just gets an SS tier without breaking a sweat. Too easy. Monster Manual is great for stopping other players from attacking a monster you don't want them attacking. When used, you can force a player to attack a specific monster on their turn, if able. This is useful for so many reasons, from making sure players avoid gaining souls to putting players in unwinnable fights. This card is a fantastic one to have on hand, A tier. Mr. Boom is a fantastic, reusable bomb that affects monsters. What else could you ask for? You could ask for the ability to deal damage to players, I guess, but that doesn't change the fact that this item allows you to get a head start on your attacks or finish off risky ones. Easy S tier. Mystery Sack is alright. When you roll, you gain either a loot, 4 cents, or nothing, all with equal chances of happening. This item is alright, but the resource gain isn't crazy, and it has that chance to fail. It's nice to have on hand, but honestly, in terms of resource gain items, it's just kind of mediocre. B tier. No! Allows you to counter other active and paid items, which can be very useful, but it suffers from the fact it can't do anything about loot cards. This thing is basically a reusable butterbean for active items, but if there aren't any good active items to cancel the effect of, this becomes less desirable. I will say, this item, like all defensive items, can be pretty powerful in the late game. Stopping other people from using powerful items is nothing to brush off, and for that, I'll give this A tier. Pandora's Box is a single-use item that will either reward you greatly or not really. It has a lot of effects, but the 2 you need to pay attention to are killing a monster and gaining a soul. These are by far the most powerful effects, and you should most definitely go for them. A free soul is a free soul, and a dead monster with a soul is a free soul. As for the other effects, bad, okay. A tier. Placebo has the potential to be a great item if there are other good active items in play. Being able to copy any tap you want is pretty powerful depending on the items available. Every good item in play technically benefits you as you hold this, which makes this pretty strong. If you think about it, this tap will always have the ability of whatever the best item for the situation is at the table. That's a pretty tough upside to ignore. A tier. Potato Peeler sucks. I guess if you have a way to look in the decks, it's alright, but if you aren't playing Eve or don't have that, this item is just almost nearly useless. It can be used in tandem with deck searching items to throw away undesirable events and treasures, but come on, who are we kidding? This thing is just almost never useful. D tier. Razor Blade is a top tier late game item. During the early game, it won't usually see much use unless someone wants to be super aggressive super early. But as the game heats up, as things get more aggressive, using this thing to finish off wounded players becomes a very viable strategy. You can hold people for ransom with it too, demanding to be paid in exchange for not using it to kill someone. All around, this item can just be the king of player control sometimes. A tier. Remote Detonator is only useful if the board is united to destroy one specific problem item. The reason this is because the effect does nothing if the vote ties. Something you'll see if use of this item isn't warranted is players voting to destroy the items of whoever used it, ironically often the remote detonator itself, which is pretty funny. Overall, this item won't see much use past early to mid-game, as players tend to break the unity needed to make this item work pretty early on. C tier. Sack Hit is a simple but effective deck search item. It allows you to look at the top card of a deck, and if you want to, put that card on the bottom. This is good for any time you might want to be able to interact with the top card of any deck, as you can see would you rather do whatever with it or a random. All around, just good to have. B tier. Alright, don't quote me on this, but I once heard from a Four Souls developer that Sack of Pennies should have been a trinket, and honestly, I have to agree. Like, let's think about this. Imagine paying 10 cents for an item that can be used to gain 1 cent and occasionally recharges when someone rolls a 1. Look, I love resource gain items as much as the next guy, but this is by far the worst one of them. This is usually going to be an item you discard at the end of your turn. It's just, oh my god. This is just so bad. 1 penny per tap. Yeah, if you have like counterfeit penny or something, yeah, it's better, but every cent gain item is better when you have counterfeit penny. This is just so bad. It's D tier. It's horrible. Really? Not too much to say about Spoonbender. It adds 1 to a roll, and that tends to be pretty effective, pretty useful. You can use it to hit an attack you would have missed, hit an outcome on a pill you wanted, increase the number of a dice you just rolled, raise the amount of dots on a face of a 6-sided random number generating instrument, open the opportunity of rolling a number less than what you wanted as if you use the A tier. Everyone kinda knows Tech X is an ungodly amount of good. It basically acts as a reusable chaos card in a way, allowing you to kill a monster after gaining 3 counters. To gain counters, you simply need to tap this card. That means if you have spare batteries on hand, you can rush the process to kill a monster or player early. If there's nothing to remove or disable this item, the game this item is in is basically put on a timer, each use of this item causing the user to inch closer and closer to victory. Easy SS tier, almost no questions asked. The battery allows you to recharge another item when used. I've talked about this before with the little battery loot card in a previous video, in that this item can be amazing or useless. It all depends on what items you have to combo with this. It relies on other items you control to be effective, so I am just going to have to rank it as completely average. When its usefulness varies so wildly, that's all I can really do. This item can be super useful if you have an active starting item, by the way. Nothing wrong with some more uses, but still, this thing just gets B tier. I don't think I've heard anybody talk about the D100, which is kind of surprising. This may be one of the best resource gain items out there, if not the best. Not a single one of these outcomes are eh. All of these are surprisingly useful, but the best obviously being the temporary stat ups upon rolling a 5 or 6. If you see this thing in the early game, go for it. I guarantee it'll help you out a ton. A tier. The D20 is an absolute classic. Just like in the video game, re-rolling is a fantastic mechanic. But unlike in the game, you have the opportunity to use re-rolling aggressively. Using this item to change a really good item an other player might have is a great idea, especially if you have knowledge of what's on top of the treasure deck. Due to the fact re-rolling is largely still chance-based, this gets a solid A tier. This is great to have. Something to keep in mind, you can re-roll your trinkets into treasures with this, as trinkets count as items. The D4 is the item the Lost used to start with in the video game. I always wondered why you used to start with that, just so weird. What's the synergy? What's the situation? Anyway, in Four Souls, it does exactly what it did in The Binding of Isaac. Rerolls all items a player holds after destroying itself. It didn't do that last bit in the video game, but this is a little thing called balancing that this card game employs. Not very well, but it tries. Obviously, there's the benefit of re-rolling another player's entire item set, potentially screwing up whatever plan they've got going. But maybe consider the possibility, think about this, of using it on yourself. If you've got a set of items or trinkets just taking up space, waiting to be sacrificed, maybe this little mass reroll will change your luck. I know it changed mine on occasion. I'm putting this in A tier, even if it is a more extreme version of its predecessor. The shovel is a bit of a weird card that doesn't really see much use unless a high reward non-soul monster is killed. It allows you to take any monster in the discard pile and put it on top of the monster deck. The issue is that you won't always have a good reason to do this if a high reward monster hasn't died, since monsters with souls usually go to whoever killed them instead of going in the discard pile, and events not being affected by this. You can use this to keep a card you don't want someone getting in the deck, but of course you would have to know what that card is with some kind of look ahead, which you won't always have. This thing just doesn't have a lot of practical uses most of the time. I really got nothing. D tier. Now, 2 of clubs is fantastic. Use this at the start of your turn, and for the rest of your turn, you get double the loot for every instance, including the start of the turn loot step. What else is there to say? You could use this to barter with other players too, like, hey, I'll give you double loot cards this turn, but why would you give them that amazing advantage? It's really best to keep this one all to yourself. Definite S tier. Battery Bum, an item that allows you to pay 4 cents to recharge an item. This kind of acts as a weaker version of the battery. The same use case for it applies here, but here you have the potential to use it more the more cash you are willing to spend. While the battery is consistently available, this item can be stronger if you have the cash to back it up. Sometimes you just don't have any money and can't use this. In my honest opinion, I think usually the battery is just better than this. Battery Bum gets a C tier. 4 cents is just a lot, man. Contract from Below is usually more dangerous to you than others. Using it allows you to steal another player's item at the cost of destroying 2 of your items, one of which is almost always the contract itself. This item can be quite useful in very niche situations, but in most cases it ends up being a little too costly. Destroying 2 of your items means whatever you're stealing had better be worth it, and even if it is, you are definitely left vulnerable. The less treasures you have, the less bad treasures you have to pay out the death penalty. The problems this item has adds it up to make it a C tier. Again, you can make power plays with this. If someone has a really good card over there, you can sacrifice it all to take it. But that situation just doesn't come up often enough. Donation Machine. This item is mostly just not worth it, unless you have a haunt item or something undesirable. Donation Machine allows you to give away one of your items in return for 8 cents, and honestly, cents are just not worth it in return for items you could have sacrificed for the death penalty. We could sit here and ponder situations in which this would be useful, and you can maybe rush the Soul of Greed with this or something, but let's be real, this item is no good, and nobody has even looked at it sitting in the shop and said to themselves, I should spend 10 cents on that! D tier. Golden Razor Blade is another item that depends on how much cash you have on hand to be effective. Being able to spend 5 cents to use a bomb is nothing to scoff at, but being able to use this multiple times in one turn is a little rare. Obviously, this item lends itself to the late game, when you might have enough items to forego buying more in favor of killing people, but usually people won't go for this. I won't overlook its late game uses, however. With an ample wallet, this item can demolish the opposition. B tier. Pay to play is just straight up a better version of Contract from Below. Like, why destroy 2 of your items when controlling this basically makes all other players' inventories shop slots? Honestly, the more I look at this thing, the better it gets. Maybe that guy in my comment section was onto something. Being able to steal an item for the same cost as buying one is super useful, as when you steal, not only do you get an item, whoever had the item does not have it anymore, which is useful if you don't want them to win. B tier. Portable Slot Machine isn't really that good. It's just a 3-cent paid version of Mystery Sack, and the resource gain isn't really good enough to justify excessively gambling over this. To be fair, luck is a fickle beast. Maybe there's some yahoo out there who uses this every game to get Soul of Greed and Gluttony. Not me though, I do not like this thing. C tier. Smelter is pretty useful. It allows you to turn loot cards into money, which gives you something to do with all those lesser cent cards. You don't even have to tap this, just boil up those loot cards and profits! Just remember, without bad loot cards in your hand, someone who might steal from you only has good ones to choose from. And when you die, you'll be forced to part with a valuable tool for success instead of that butt penny you nixed a turn ago. Best to only use this when you need the money right now. A tier. Unlike the video game, the poop is actually not half bad an item here. Getting hit while holding this gives it a counter, and you can use these counters to prevent 1 damage each. Basically, this becomes a soul heart generator if you hold onto this for a long while. Even when I say it out loud, I start to think this item is like, wow, that's actually pretty nice. If you see this, try and hold on to it for a while. It may be much more useful than it looks. A tier. Baby Haunt sucks, and you'll always groan when it appears. It states that monsters have +1 dice roll whenever its controller's turn, making everything worse. There's no upside to this, I think you know this, but it's basically a curse found in the treasure deck. However, unlike curses, this counts as an item, meaning you can use it in destroy an item prompts, or can even re-roll it. It won't be destroyed by the death penalty though. If you die holding a haunt item, you give it to another player, allowing you to choose who to curse with misfortune upon your demise. F tier. Daddy Haunt amplifies any damage you would take by 1. This usually results in you dying in 1 hit on your turn while you control this. Same tips apply to Baby Haunt, just not fun. This item sucks. F tier, it's over. Woo! Part 1 and we are done. I'll be making 2 more parts of this covering the rest of the 4 Souls items, so like and subscribe if you want to see that. Also might be time to advertise that I have a Discord and that I stream on YouTube. So turn on notifications and join the cord below. I've got some cool stuff planned, but I may take a short break before I get to them. That's all for now. Take care. Have a nice day.